I don't know. Is this thing good? Is this thing good? Has anyone heard if this thing's good?
Completely wrong here. I don't hate cloud gaming, and I especially don't hate handheld cloud gaming. I mean, I was probably the single...
Oh my God, young Linus. Look at him there. You remember when he used to do this? He had the two. Oh man, this is taking me back. I used to watch Linus like on the way, and when we had nothing to do at work, I watched all of his stuff. And in high school, I watched some of his stuff when he was tiny. You remember back when Linus was making videos out of that house and it was just piled with junk and old boxes and stuff? Dude. Oh, I used to do it all the time. I used to watch all of his stuff. I still watch a lot of it, but I mean, it's so big now. His whole platform is so big. It's kind of tough to even figure out what's happening. Let's see. I'm the second person to touch this ROG Ally. Oh, is this the better version? Notice how I previewed the link before clicking on it this time. Professional streamer here. Yeah, he's built an empire. He has, and he's done a great job of it. He really has. It's very impressive. What's this?
Inside this box was flown and hand delivered to me by Asus. And I can tell you with certainty that while I'm not allowed to tell you the exact specs, this is not just another Steam Deck clone, because it's more like 2 Steam Deck clones. They are claiming literally double the performance, twice the refresh rate, more than double the resolution, and I am one of only 2 people outside of Asus who gets to show off the ROG Ally prototype today.
I haven't heard about this. Is this like brand new?
And I'm the only one who gets to show you our sponsor, Zoho One, who's here to help you take your business to the next level. Their all-in-one software suite has everything you need to streamline your operation. Years charted out the ROG Ally, but their team has actually spent the last 10 years working on various handheld console concepts, just waiting for an opening in a difficult market that has chewed up and spit out numerous experienced players over the years. And the biggest thing that proves this isn't just another copycat design is what I'm doing right now. Asus obsessed over how people actually use these handheld devices, finding that they don't want them to be too big, they also don't want them to be too small, and they want them to be genuinely comfortable to hold.
I still can't hold my Nintendo Switch for more than like 20 minutes before I have fingers go numb. Like, if you have bigger hands, have you seen these hands? If you have bigger hands, it just kills your circulation somehow. It's like magic. It's horrifying. The video is like 3 days old and the deck isn't out yet. Dude, I would, if what they're saying is true, I'm very intrigued by this. Like, see, this is exciting. This is something that like has a value proposition. For me, being able to take something like this on a plane or a long car ride, that sells it. When it's a cloud device that requires you to be connected to your home Wi-Fi, I'm less about it.
Now, when you first pick up the ROG Ally, it isn't very comfortable, to be perfectly honest with you. I have a hard time reaching the shoulder buttons, and these bottom corners here just like kind of dig into my hand. But then watch this, and it's perfect. These little contours here at the bottom right and left are designed for the device to be held at an angle with the screen actually facing your face, and in many cases resting, either on the desk in front of you or on your lap. In terms of buttons, it's a pretty bog standard Xbox layout. We've got our start and select here and here, or whatever Microsoft calls those buttons. I actually don't know what these other buttons do. Oh, I guess we're gonna find. Oh, okay, so that switches between Windows and your game. Quick switcher, and oh, that brings up their command center. Ooh, I really like this quick switcher between mouse mode. Is this to make it like keyboard jointed mouse or whatever?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Quick toggle between 60 and 120 hertz refresh rate. Oh man, I have been waiting for someone to do 120 hertz. I know it's worse for battery life. Okay, I know it's more expensive, but there are a lot of games, particularly emulated games, enthusiast, that you totally could run at 120 frames per second and would totally run on this hardware, especially this hardware. I am loving these RGB joysticks.
That actually is kind of cool. I know RGB is stupid, but still.
In terms of buttons, the
Still
good
fun.
thing about the joystick.
Yeah, it reminded that this is a prototype and does not have that many specs yet. It's true. It's true. However, it's still cool. I mean, if what they're saying is good, then I'm interested. I'm very interested. My Steam Deck was a huge save when my flight was delayed by 24 hours. Oof. Yeah, that blows. That blows. Yeah, I've loved my Steam Deck. I have to have the right games for it, but yeah, I'm loving it.
This is their full size, so you'll get the same level of control that you would get with a Steam Deck. The bad news is you'll get the same level of control as you will with the Steam Deck. They're not Hall effect, which means that even though you can calibrate the 0 point, so you shouldn't suffer from drift, knock on wood, you can't fully eliminate dead zones, and they might not have the same level of durability. D-pad feels solidly okay. It's far from the best I've felt, but it's not nearly the worst. And while I'm not a huge fan of long travel ABXY buttons, these aren't bad. I mean, I'd say they're about like you'd get on like an Xbox controller. Though it should be noted that this is a prototype device, and I would love for that to improve. Asus is here supervising. Now that I'm in position, the shoulder and trigger buttons are very easy to access. These seem like analog triggers, though they haven't confirmed that for me yet. And like the Steam Deck, and unlike many other competing Windows handhelds on the market, they've got additional buttons on the back of the device, though not as many as the Steam Deck. This looks flippin' awesome. I'm not allowed to show you guys FPS, but Asus says that at 15 watts, they are up to 50% faster than the Steam Deck, and at 35 watts, they are double the performance. At 7 inches,
Wow.
1080p looks crazy sharp. Okay, if this is running variable refresh rate, it makes sense that it was so hard for me to nail down what FPS it's running at, because if it dips below the panel's variable refresh rate range, then it'll really start to chug, and as long as it's within that range, it's gonna look shockingly smooth. So if I had to guess, I'd say we're seeing anywhere from 45 FPS down to it's probably dipping to about 20, and that's where I'm really seeing those stutters. No matter how
But running at 1080p though, because I don't think he said it's running at variable resolution. It's just variable refresh rate.
you
That's pretty
slice
good.
it, though, this is incredibly impressive. We're not even in game yet. I am loving this display. Okay, not only does it run at a higher resolution than the Steam Deck, it also hits a peak of 500 nits, which is more than
Oh baby.
I think that's higher than any of the handhelds we've tested recently. And it's rated at just 7 milliseconds for pixel response times. Now, that doesn't sound that impressive compared to some of the latest gaming monitors that boasting sub 1 millisecond response times. But you gotta understand.
Yeah, this freaking LG OLED that they sent has 0.03 millisecond response time. It's ridiculous.
That even on something like a gaming laptop, the native pixel response time is going to be pretty similar to this. They're just overdriving those pixels. So this is going to be at least a clean 7 milliseconds, which at 60 hertz is going to look great, and 120 hertz should be okay. Wow, this is running really smooth. I wasn't even thinking about it, which is the mark of good. Okay, we're only at 720p though. You guys need to change it so that I can toggle to manual mode as well. Once I configure my manual mode, I should be able to just toggle to manual mode. Dude though, this is so smooth. If you play lighter games,
It is like the coolest thing of doing sponsorships and integrations like this, or being invited to preview events for games, because you're talking to the developers and you just be like, hey, this sucks, you should change this. And then they do. It's great. Like when I went to the finals thing, and there were a handful of us there, you know, playing games together, Bruce Green and Danny O'Dwyer and those guys. Like we would run into a bug, or we'd run into a clunky thing with the UI. We're like, hey, when I hit this drop down menu and I press the selection, if the selection overlaps with the button underneath it, it clicks the button underneath it and the selection, which causes the whole thing to glitch out. Can you make it so that drop down menu like is over and is above the underlayer and the button underneath it, so that when I press like full screen, windowed, or windowed borderless, if I press on windowed borderless and then there's a button underneath it, it doesn't press that button. Can you separate those? They're like, yeah, give us a second. Then they'd run off, they do some weird thing, and then they come back and they're like, okay, back out, reload. We'd restart the game and then it's fixed. Like, it's so cool. It's so cool. Can you play Elden Ring on that? I mean, you can play Elden Ring on the Steam Deck, so I would be shocked if you couldn't play it on this.
indie games, emulated games. 120 hertz makes so much sense.
By the way, does anybody know if the Dolphin emulator is still coming to Steam. I would be shocked if companies don't try to get that taken down, but I saw some news about it coming. Is it still coming, or did they shut it down?
I'm all the way back down to 15 watts performance mode, and this is still an outstanding experience. It's everything. It's the responsiveness, it's being able to nail the timing, it's the smoothness of the animations. If you're playing lighter games, retro games, emulated games, there's just no comparison here. Really? At 15 watts, you guys are rating this at 20 decibels? I mean, yeah, I believe it. And we've got some insights to share with you guys on how they're getting it so quiet, even though we're not allowed to open it today. First though, let's see if we're even getting the main benefit of these fans being so quiet. Can we play something like a rhythm game on this and actually enjoy it, unlike on the Steam Deck? I can't say I miss audio surf, but these speakers sound great though. I've only got this at about 30% right now.
What?
That is a very full sound considering the size of this device. All right. It's not like I don't have any complaints, right? No Hall effect joysticks, for example, but Asus pointed out that they are very replaceable, so it wouldn't be a surprise if...
Dude, my Steam Deck still... I love the thing, but man, it causes so many problems when it specifically is trying to rev up for heavier games. That fan, it like slightly clicks too. It's really, really bizarre. It's quite distracting. Like on the plane, I think, you hit the power button and then it's just, it's painful. It's terrible. This thing sounds way quieter.
Third-party options did show up. I didn't notice the weight, but they wanted me to mention that it's exactly 608 grams, which is apparently a lucky number or something like that. The triggers and shoulders no longer bothered me at all once I was actually playing games, but I do want to see the stabilization of these improve. Okay, let's change gears though and talk about cooling. The way that they achieved this level of quiet, aside from just putting in a quality thermal solution instead of like weird janky fans that make a lot of noise, is by using a heat pipe with a 2-element heatsink. So that's why it's got 2 exhausts over here and 2 separate intakes. They managed to pack 2 fans into this thing in addition to this hardware that is double the performance of the Steam Deck under ideal conditions. Now seems like a good time to talk about I/O. There's a headphone jack up here. We've got a micro SD slot. UHS 2, pretty cool. A really funky looking USB-C port, we'll talk more about that later. Volume buttons, as well as a fingerprint sensor that includes a single sign-on, I think is what that's called or whatever. Basically, it caches your fingerprint when you turn on the device and then logs all the way into your Windows profile. So if you have multiple profiles because you share your device with your kids or your SO or whatever, you just turn it on and it'll drop you right in your profile. They're not letting me show the motherboard and the internals to you guys, but I did see them, and there's a couple of things that I'm allowed to share with you. First, that the SSD is a 2230 sized SSD, so likely it'll ship with 1 terabyte max storage. And the second is that the battery capacity should be pretty competitive with the Steam Deck. What I want to know though, is does it fit in the little handheld storage spot on our backpack? LTTstore.com. Oh, this is not the standard backpack. This is prototype 1. Don't worry too much about that. But it's the same size, and the answer is yes. Okay, remember how I was going to talk about that funky USB-C connector that was like 3 times as wide? The Ally has no Thunderbolt or USB 4, and that's because of that connector. It's Asus's XG mobile connection, and it allows you to
look
plug
at
in
that
external
monster
GPUs like this one.
Jesus.
There is a part of me that wishes it was Thunderbolt, because that would make it compatible with third-party GPU docks rather than just this one. But there is an advantage to this approach. It's PCIe by 8 rather than PCIe by 4 with a whole bunch of Thunderbolt protocol overhead. So what that means is, unlike Thunderbolt, there's actually a point in connecting an RTX 4090 mobile to this thing. It shouldn't be nearly as bottlenecked. I absolutely love the XG Mobile on my Flow X13. When it works, it can be a little bit flaky. But the difference is that Asus sent me mine. I didn't have to pay for it. And at the price that this thing costs, it is pretty tough to justify. To be clear, it's not Asus that I blame for this. They won't confirm the real reason, but I have no doubt in my mind that it's because of NVIDIA. NVIDIA is extremely fussy about the products that their GPUs are built into. And they have arbitrary rules like, well, if it's connected to a laptop, it has to be a mobile chip, even though we're talking about the XG Mobile, which isn't really mobile. It's a product that will only ever run plugged into the wall. So in my mind, Asus has got to work with AMD then to use desktop class GPUs in, maybe a slightly larger enclosure, or build compatibility with the XG Mobile interface into their eGPU Thunderbolt enclosures for regular graphics cards. That would make the XG Mobile affordable and upgradable.
Dude, I'm just like, I'm so out of the loop on this stuff because I'll be real, I I have been talking, of course, with Nikki about like, oh, should we move to Florida? Should we just travel for a bit? Should we try to just get out of Dodge and try some different places? And every time we talk about it, I'm like, okay, well, we've got to be prepared to lug a massive computer and maybe a PS5 as well with us in case a game releases and I need to play it for review. And so then I've got to have the cameras for the stream. And so we're lugging all of this stuff. And pretty soon I have suitcases full of random gear and equipment. But and like I do have a gaming laptop, but it's like, I don't think you could play a game and stream it. And like, I just don't think it's that capable. But I just totally spaced. There's also solutions like this with external GPUs and all sorts of crazy stuff. Like it's wild. It's wild. And connecting a portable handheld device to a separate external GPU, that's insane, dude. That's wild. Wow. Yeah, make like XQC and Amazon wishlist your household items and get everything fresh. Yeah, for real, dude. He's so freaking rich. It's stupid. It's just outrageous. Oh, man. I think it's not made for that, really. You are really working. You need a full computer. I think it's just about like I am not actively editing most of the videos. That's mostly Jacob. So for me, I don't need the video editing workstation. But if we were to travel for like 3-4 weeks, I could make do with streaming off of like one camera, of course, and then the laptop and just do that. It'd be really hard to play games at the same time unless I have like 2 laptops or something, and then I route an HDMI out, and then I have like an external capture card or something, which you can do. It's just like pretty soon you start lugging 2-3 gaming laptops and cameras and everything. It just starts to become much less convenient, stops making sense. But I don't know, it's woe is me, right? Oh no, if I travel, it's going to be hard to figure out how to bring all this gaming stuff with me.
Right now, it's neither, which is a shame because with it, you can easily turn this thing into the Switch Pro that the market is so hungry for. By the way, Asus asked us to show you a couple of their new products. This isn't one of them, but this is, how the hell do I pronounce this? Raikiri Pro? This is their new Raikiri Pro. It has a screen on it. It's almost exactly the same layout as an Xbox controller, but it's slightly smaller because some people find it to be a little bit big. And it's got 4 buttons on the back, as well as these adjustable, whether you want the trigger to work as a trigger or as just another shoulder button, little switches. I forget what these are called. But they also wanted me to show off this thing. This is actually a super cool companion for the Ally. It allows you to charge the Ally via USB-C. You also get an extra USB port and an HDMI output for the Ally just plugged into the wall. It's really compact. I would use the Raikiri, but it's apparently an engineering unit and does not work yet. Okay, I mean, if this is a Zen 4 mobile CPU, based on what I've seen from Zen 4 so far and its efficiency, I'm going ultimate 4K with this mobile 4090. I mean, it should work, right? It's funny, the Asus reps were like, yeah, we were surprised at how little bottlenecking there is, but mobile 4090 is not as fast as a real 4090. So yeah, it's only PCIe Gen 3x8, but that's lots of bandwidth. And because it's not Thunderbolt, there's no bi-directional communication really. Like it's not outputting over the laptop's display or anything like that. It's just outputting to your monitor over HDMI or over a DisplayPort. It's a plenty fast chip, and this CPU is clearly fast enough.
Wow.
This is well over 60 frames per second. Wow, no, I don't know. Yeah. I love it when the camera.
That's outrageous,
really
man.
great.
It's so to be clear, just in case you're not seeing it, they have a mobile GPU. That's this thing plugged into the little handheld device, and that's what's running this. That's it. That's ridiculous. Granted, the mobile GPU has to be plugged into the wall, but honestly, I don't see that as a huge issue, especially if you're traveling. Like for me, going to a hotel and being just like plugged into the wall is not that big of a deal. And being able to do something like this is just outrageous. That's crazy. I had no idea this was like a thing. I had no idea.
Hey, come on. Either way, this is running amazing. I mean, it should once you've spent probably about $2,500, but
Yeah,
still.
for real.
Over the past year, we've had several other devices hit the market looking to scratch that next-gen itch that some of the more enthusiast-level handheld gamers are looking for. And truthfully, I am one of them, because as much as I love the Steam Deck, I don't daily drive it. This is partly because of the loud fan, but the size, the more limited game compatibility, and the performance are also factors. Now, obviously the price of the Steam Deck is a major selling point, all other things being equal. But all other things are not equal anymore. We won't know the exact price of this device until it shows up on Best Buy shelves and around the world in the next few months. But being this much faster, all of a sudden it could make sense. And if you were hoping that Valve would simply refresh the Steam Deck to match the Ally's performance, but at their existing price, think again. Recently, Valve has gone on the record stating that while they are working on the Steam Deck 2, it's not coming for a long time, which in Valve time is, I don't know, let's put it this way. We just got Counter-Strike 2. Valve's custom SoC strategy then was a big advantage for them at launch, but it's starting to look like a liability, much like the cycle we see with the traditional console players, where they launch a new console, it's absolutely killer compared to a custom PC, and then it becomes long in the tooth, and a custom PC starts to look like the obvious choice until they refresh and so on and so forth. So while the Steam Deck did a great job of getting people back into handheld gaming, especially playing PC games, and the low barrier to entry is amazing at $400, some of you have more money that you'd like to spend, and this is starting to look like it could offer enough to justify whatever that higher price is. There's going to be a lot more for us to cover in the full review. The faster UHS 2 microSD slot, for example. Does it affect loading times? I don't know.
For me, the main selling point would be that mobile GPU. That's insane. That actually starts to make it much more compelling for me. And granted, I have a very, very weird use case. Okay, like it's what I would be doing is not common. It's weird. Not many people are going to be traveling and then be like, okay, I have to have something ultra portable that I can also play a modern AAA game on. The one downside with this is the capture, but I would be routing this through my Ninja 5 Atomos for capture. But I don't know. That's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. I still probably, honestly, in my use case, the more I think about it, I'm probably still better off just going the route of like a really high-end gaming laptop. I think that probably makes more sense, but who knows? Who knows? All told, though, it just reaffirms the idea that this whole thing, it just makes no sense. See, we came full circle. This whole thing just doesn't make any damn sense at all. A dedicated device for remote play that cannot play games locally and only does this. And what's funny is, like,
Daddy, chill.
this is something that I actually expected. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready to see Luke from 6 years ago? Baby Luke. I predicted that Sony was going to do something like this. I was like, how should Sony compete with the Switch? March 15th. So I was 19. Okay. And let's just see this. This was my prediction for how Sony, and recommendation for how Sony should take on the Switch.
So, Sony, looking at this naturally as any person with any mental
You mean business, but whatever.
capacity would do, you have to look at it and say, well, okay, where are they going with this? What would be the point of pushing this PlayStation Now experience? It frankly doesn't really compete with Game Pass specifically. But what I think it's setting up for is a PlayStation Vita update. Specifically, the Vita hasn't really gone through a formative change in actually quite a number of years. It's been basically the same device with some alterations here and there. But for the most part, it's been the same product without any real reason to purchase it other than, for instance, streaming from your PlayStation onto it, which can be fun and can work. I've done it a few times with a friend's Vita. I don't have one. But what this would allow them to do is allow you to stream. If they hook up the Vita and really optimize the Vita for this service, the PlayStation Now service, it would allow you to stream a game such as the one you see on screen right now, Days Gone, which is an upcoming PS4.
It's 2 years out still. I never thought that it would still be 2 years away. But.
Exclusive. It would allow you to stream that to a handheld device, which would be a console seller for me. If you also look at it, you could stream Uncharted 4 to this device, because all of a sudden the Vita, all it needs to be able to do, it doesn't necessarily have to have a lot of graphics processing power behind it or a lot of pure computational power behind it. It just has to excel in its wireless connectivity or any sort of connection to their servers.
And so at the time, 6 years ago, I was like, oh, all they have to do is have a console that all it is like a Switch form factor, but it can just stream through PlayStation Now, and that'll be a good way to take on the Switch. And that boom, done. I never thought that Sony would make something that is basically that, but is even less useful. Even less useful. But what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
took my thing.